On today's episode, we're going to dive into one Passive Income Poppas story from our Rainmaker community. This story will leave you inspired on how he pushed through all walls to get to where he is today. Last year, around this time, he was looking at Christmas with a little bit of stress, anxiety, and worry, not knowing how he was going to provide for his kids in that season. And this year, his story has completely changed. In this episode, you're going to hear the steps he took to create lasting impact and generational wealth for his family. Tune in. All right, Spencer, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, Stephen and Chelsea.
This has been an episode that we are so excited about because we had you come on one of our last challenges and share just a glimpse of your story into entrepreneurship, into Amazon, making passive income for your family, the stretches of faith that you stepped into, but then the results that happen, and people's jaws just hit the floor when you told this story. I was like, I think I immediately messaged you after. I was like, we need to have you on the podcast. So if you're listening to this episode, buckle up. This is going to be a fun one. Spencer, I would love to have you start with just sharing your Rainmaker story because it didn't start, you didn't start with tons of money. You didn't start with tons of resource, right? You just had resourcefulness. Right. And I love that kind of how can I mindset that you carried right at the beginning and what it's turned into. So take us on that journey. Where did this whole thing start?
Well, you mentioned the word resourcefulness. Let me touch on that real quick. I coined the term, our greatest resource is our own resourcefulness.
Love it.
Right? When all is said and done, we're 100% accountable for our decisions in life and where we get in life. And we have to become resourceful. We have to be our greatest resource. And that's something I learned in the process, but I shared this on the live challenge that I had actually been looking to find out how I can get onto Amazon to sell PS5s and Xbox Series X's because the market price for those were so high. People were selling for $1,500 on eBay, and I wanted to get one for my kids. I'll go a little bit deeper into this story as to why I actually did this that I didn't share on the live challenge. But my wife and I were going through some alienation of our kids. They were being alienated from us by the ex. And so I was doing everything I could to make them want to be with us. I went into debt on credit cards to take them to Disneyland and I would wait for tax returns the next year to pay those off and pay off the credit cards. And so that was my motivation for getting an Xbox. I really wasn't a gamer.
You saw this opportunity, these Xboxes, these PS5s were going for well above market price. I remember you said you went to Black Fridays, you were getting up early, you're like, I have to get one of these things.
Yeah, my wife, bless her, she attributes this mistake to the fact that I only had 4 hours of sleep that night. But it was one of those Black Fridays where, it wasn't the normal Black Friday at Walmart, right? Where people are almost killing each other to get into the doors. In fact, there was a line and the manager was walking out and asking people what they were looking for. And I heard these two kids in front of me say a PS5. He says, nope, all the PS5s and Xboxes, they were completely sold out on the Wednesday Black Friday drop. They call it a drop that I didn't know that they were doing. And so I thought, oh no, man, I've got to get one. And the reason why I was looking for an Xbox was this was the new next generation. I actually ended up buying one of the older ones, an Xbox One S for the kids. But I wanted to get one of the new ones so I could turn around and resell it and get an extra $300 of Christmas money. And this was at the end of November, right? So I was trying to prepare and I would do everything I could, you guys. I was just talking to my wife about this yesterday about how refreshing it is that we don't have to do this anymore. That I used to get all the Old Navy emails and I was like an addict on getting the best deals and I would not do it if it wasn't 50% off. Yeah. And I remember going and buying my kids school clothes for Christmas so they could have Christmas presents, but also we wouldn't have to spend that money come the school year because while I was in school, things got really tough on us financially. My wife was putting me through school. She was a part-time cosmetologist. We felt like we should not put the kids in daycare, that one of us needed to be home raising them. And incidentally, that was me because I was a full-time student. And so it was just so tight financially. And then all the things that we were going through with the alienation and some of the stress and the anxieties that caused that added in life. So I had that motivation, and I ended up going into my car and getting on the phone to get one of these Xbox to see if someone had them on Facebook, and I was scammed out of it. I ended up buying through long story short, I ended up buying through Facebook Messenger Pay rather than Facebook Checkout, because when I went to click on the checkout button, the price came up. It was actually different than the price that they had listed. And so I went and messaged him and said, hey, the price it was actually less. And he said, oh, the checkout is just screwy here. If you want to just pay through Messenger Pay. And I was like, oh, okay, it's all Facebook, right? So, and it took me about 3 minutes to realize that I had been scammed. And then because he started messaging me as if he was messaging somebody else that hadn't purchased yet. And I said, whoa. And I asked him, and the next thing you know, he blocked me. And I screenshotted all the messages, tried to get it to Facebook, and there was no help. Tried to get help from the credit card company, no help. But while I was sitting in my car gutted through that experience, I thought, there's no way. I can't go back and tell my wife that I just got scammed out of $617. I've got to find a way to make that money back. And so I went to Walmart, nothing. I couldn't find anything except 2 Xbox controllers that normally would sell for around $65, $69 for $39 flat. And I was like, whoa, that's a good profit margin I can make on that. Mm-hmm. So I bought those 2. And then I thought, well, let's see if they're doing the same thing online. Went online to Walmart, and they had awesome ones, special editions, limited editions. And I ended up buying about 25 of them. Wow. And I sold all of them in the month of December. Could have sold more, but I kept running out, and people were asking for the sport red ones. They really like those. Then on Black Friday, I also went to Costco, and the AirPods Pro were on sale for $169, and I was selling them for $235. I bought up some of those, and really my only objective was to make up the $300 or the $617 that I lost. I was trying to make an extra $300, but somewhere I came across the next generation consoles being sold on eBay for $1,500. And I thought, how in the heck can I get my hands on those? And I couldn't find them in the stores, online, nowhere. Had no idea how to get these. My brother-in-law sends me a picture of a wrapped present under the screen. He goes, man, look what we got for Christmas. I said, what is that? He said, that's a PS5. I said, how'd you get one of those? And he said that my niece, who is phenomenal at research, she's the one that launched the humidifiers. She's doing awesome. Yeah. She found these Twitter guys that had bots and would let people know every time drops were happening. And they had inside information for Target and Best Buy, and they had friends that worked for them would let them know. And so I had 3 Best Buy accounts, 3 Target accounts, Sony account, Microsoft account, Costco, you name it. And it was a kind of stressful, because sometimes the Target drops happen. Most of the time, the Target drops happen between 3 and 7 in the morning.
Oh my goodness! And so one time I woke up, off, like ping, and you'd be like, "Oh my goodness, I gotta get one."
Yeah, but most of the time I wouldn't hear it. I would be in a dead sleep.
Oh my goodness!
And I remember one night I woke up to use the restroom and laid back down in bed, looked at my phone, and nothing. No text, Twitter notifications that there was a drop, because there was supposed to be a drop that night at Target, and ding! I check it. Target drop. And I pulled up I had my phone, my laptop, and my iPad on them. And I pulled up 3 different accounts. I ended up getting 4 consoles. At one point, I had 8 in my kitchen, and people were showing up every day locally to buy those.
Wow.
Nobody could get their hands on them.
Yeah.
And so that's why I call the scam being scammed my scam blessing. Because it kicked me into overdrive productive mode at doing what I could to not just earn back the money, but to make a little bit extra. And I ended up selling around 30 consoles and made about $7,000 profit.
Wow. That's
awesome.
And
that's crazy.
You guys,
go for it.
That became the seed money for me joining Rainmakers Academy and launching my first product.
Wow. That's amazing.
And I knew, like, when I was going through the 7-day challenge, when the time came to join the Rainmakers Mastermind Academy, it was a no-brainer for me. I knew that I would have no buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
I knew I wouldn't be gutted like I was when I got scammed out of the Xbox. That's for sure. And I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. I was like, this is it. I I really truly felt like it was a blessing from God that came into my
Wow.
life at that moment, because I was already seeking. I went to Amazon, the website, tried to do some research and figure out how I could get on there selling. And it was just so complex. I didn't know. So the information that you guys put together, Steve, and all the video tutorials and all the time that you spent doing that was just so invaluable to me. I think I spent only about an hour and a half a day going through the course material with
Yeah.
kids bouncing all over my lap, fighting, having to put out fires and so forth. But I ended up getting through it in about 3 months. And I had my first product launched in 6 months.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
And I started with only $6,600 in my first 4,000 units, and that included shipping.
Wow. Wow. That's so amazing. Before we tell people like where you are now with the Amazon business, because if you're hearing this story for the first time, it's going to blow your mind. I want to come back to that resourcefulness, right? Because like a lot of people kind of just, I feel like they are acted upon, like they kind of become victims of their circumstances, or, hey, I got scammed, I'm going to give up. Or, maybe this year we'll we'll skip Christmas, right? Or like, you just like, but you didn't have that. You had this kind of like, I have to make this work, kind of this hunger, right? Of like, I can make this work, I will make this work, but I'm not going to give up when walls come up. So I just want to commend you for that, because like,
thank you.
that is huge. And also just like resourcefulness, like he saw an opportunity, of like, okay, I see these things selling for more than retail. If I could just find a way. And once you start kind of focusing on potentially an opportunity like that, you kind of almost have like open hands to it, right? And then when this thing came along where you're like, oh, now I found this Twitter account and all these things, like you're more open to it. You were seeking it, and it found you, you found it. And then it provided this opportunity for your family, which ended up being seed money to not only pay for Christmas, but also, start your business on Amazon, where you've really scaled this thing. So just want to commend you for that. Like, that's so powerful. And for anyone listening who's in that season, I don't know, what would you say to someone who's in the season like that, where they are kind of in that, like, I got to make something work right now, like, what would you say to them if they've been hitting walls? Like, how would you encourage them?
I just believe that if someone is truly fixed in their mind to succeed, that a way, even if they can't find a way, I believe a way will be provided. You know some of the difficulties that I went through this past year, and then actually some of the products that I launched, I decided that I'm not going to continue on those next year, and that's okay, because I made enough to have my own capital launch my own product that the data shows will be a good product. So that's one thing I tell people is you just have to become fixed that you're not going to become too discouraged. I think it's okay to be discouraged, right? But you cannot become defeated. You cannot be defeated. And discouragement is something that I think it's just a human nature, right? It's natural. I certainly was discouraged. And there's going to be some times where there were some times actually that I questioned whether God had my back. And I came to realize that everything's going to be okay. If I just keep pressing forward, right, and being persistent, good things will happen. And I shared the quote from Napoleon Hill that many men have acquired riches out of great necessity. They became rich because they had to. And that's kind of where I was at. But one of my favorite quotes from that book, Think and Grow Rich, is where he talks about the persistence test. And he says, it seems as if there is a hidden guide whose duty it is to test men through all sorts of discouraging experiences. And he says that those who don't pass the persistent test, they don't make the grade. But those who do, he said, are bountifully rewarded for their persistence. They receive as their compensation whatever goal they are pursuing. And that's great. But he says, but they receive something infinitely more. And that is the knowledge that every failure carries with it the seed of an equivalent advantage.
Wow.
So the greater benefit through passing that persistence test is not even the goal. It's not even the financial aspect. It's the knowledge that no matter what comes your way, if you are persistent, good things are going to happen for you. And that's why I say you just have to trust and move forward, because that hidden guide whose duty it is to test all men through all sorts of discouraging experience, sometimes it seems like he is really set on his mission and his goal to stop you. And you just have to be just as determined, if not more, that you're not going to be stopped.
Yeah. Wow. That's so powerful. It's so like looking back on our entrepreneurial history. If you've listened to this podcast, like you've heard the ups and the downs, the walls, and it's so true that like that strength that's built in the resistance, is truly what not only keeps you going, but also gives you the strength to overcome the next resistance,
Yeah.
like the next thing, the next wall. It's like, if I didn't break through that last wall, I wouldn't be able to break through the next wall, So maybe even you see that in your Amazon journey, because even that, like breaking through in that season, I mean, this was just a little over a year ago, right? That you kind of like this initial kind of wall you broke through. And I'm sure there were walls previous to that you broke through. But then when Amazon, like, you were persistent on Amazon, there was even walls on Amazon, right? But you had strength from the past to keep powering through. And so, Spencer, tell people a little bit about where your Amazon business is now, because I think that's going to it's going to really encourage people. Like the power of your actions today, like even just a year from now, could be completely life-changing.
Yeah. So my heck, I mean, 11 months since launching, we had exceeded 800,000 in revenue. Within 12 months, it was over 850,000 in revenue. And we profited close to $400,000 this year.
Wow.
Notwithstanding all the difficulties that we went through. And that was life-changing for us, guys. We literally went from extreme poverty to being okay, to being well. And I wouldn't call it a rags to riches story, because, by any means, we're not rich. Maybe by the end of this year on paper, Stephen, when I get that seven-figure award, we'll be paper millionaires. But I'm a very financially responsible person. And so we live off of very little right now.
Yeah.
And the majority of it is going back into my business. And, so we started small, which most people do, and which I think is the Rainmaker approach, is to start to small, especially on your first product, because you're getting your feet wet. And that's what I did. And once I saw a bigger opportunity, I went after it. And I also knew that I needed to have my wife home from work by the time she was supposed to go back from maternity leave, which would have been on May 5th. Milo, our 6-month-old, he was born, we're going to have to get our 2 little ones together someday.
Yeah.
But he was born on April 5th. And actually I told my wife summer of 2021 last year, I said, if I can project based upon the data, if my projections are right, that we will hit the numbers that we'll hit. By the time you're supposed to go back to work from maternity leave, I'm going to tell you don't have to go back to work.
Wow.
And it actually happened. I was able to tell her before Milo was born, we had done $30,000 profit in the month of March selling water balloons. And it was still cold in most places of the country.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, it's only going to get better from here in the summertime, so you don't have to go back to work.
Yeah. Wow.
And then we hit some obstacles, and it caused me a lot of stress. And
because I remember in that season we were messaging back and forth, because now the business is making, I mean, it was like 7,000 a day, 10,000 a day. Like you were cranking, and then there was some pushback. It was like right around that time you're about to tell your wife, hey, don't go back to work. Or maybe you just told her, right? There was like another like resistance there, almost like it's just another thing. Like, are you going to stick with this? Are you going to power through? Something came up where it's kind of, again, that like test of faith. Like, you had projected all this stuff. You had seen this trend, but then there's another wall, right? I think it was June your highest month, or July, or what was the highest?
Yeah, we sold over 13,000 units in June.
Wow. 13,000 units. That's crazy. So crazy. I love this. And for anyone listening who's like new to Amazon, like you're new to Rainmakers, because I know we have people all over listening to the show. What we do is like we help people like Spencer's, families like Spencer's, launch products on Amazon. But we do it in a way that Amazon is fulfilling these products. So this isn't Spencer packing up 13,000 units himself and shipping it in. Like how much, I was wondering how much time you were putting into the business at that point.
So, honestly, I felt like the biggest time expenditure is really in the product research, right? But and talking to your suppliers and working that out. I had massive amount of boxes show up and put in my parking space on pallets. And I was like, wow, what am I going to do with these? I ended up stocking a ton of them in my living room and up against the wall in my kitchen. But, because I wanted stuff in my house so that I could start sending them into Amazon. And then when I moved into this place, the whole reason why I did it is because I had an unfinished basement. And it was about $750 a month more than what we were paying. But with what we were making with the Christmas sales on our bath crayons and whatever, I assumed that we would be able to afford it, and especially when we launched the water balloons. So the basement became our inventory storage for a little while until Amazon increased our restock limit to where I was able to send literally 20,000 units directly to Amazon from my supplier.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's so
and
cool.
So I didn't do anything. Like, I just spent time with my kid.
I love you said your persistence and not willing to give up, even, leading up to joining Rainmakers. And then again, in Rainmakers, entrepreneurship is always, Stephen touched upon this. We have walls that come up, or it's a faith journey. And as you are further along in your business, further along in selling on Amazon, we always make educated risks based on data, what we think is going to sell. But at the end of the day, it is sometimes just like, okay, I'm going to go for it because I trust the process. And right. I know that your kids were watching you as you're going through this Amazon journey. Is there any stories with them that really stand out to you as far as the ups and downs of getting to you where you are today? And I know you said I don't feel like I'm a rags to riches story, but you have with the skills and the mindset, I believe that you shifted things entirely for your whole family. Are there any stories that stand out in the journey with you and your kids, just having a moment of we're going to get through this? Or if there are any particular stories, is there anything you would say to your kids if they are in your shoes, 20, 30 years from now, what would you want to tell them if they decide to start a business or want to create that generational legacy that I believe that you have created for your family?
Yeah, I think that there's so much that can be said, right? But the first thing that came to my mind is gratitude. I think that it's so important for us to stay in a state of gratitude. And maybe that's part of the persistence test, right? Is learning how to be grateful for what you do have, even when you're going through really tough times. And in fact, when I had my listing shut down the first time, I went through a lot of depression that I didn't even know was possible. I got hit with what I call a psychological uppercut that I didn't even see coming, that I didn't even think was possible. But through the whole process, I remember walking out of my room. I was in my room praying and doing whatever I could to ease the pain and the anxiety I was feeling. And I decided that I should probably come out and get some water because I was getting dehydrated. And I walked out of my bedroom and I heard my little sweetheart, my little princess, Felina, that you just saw, jumping on her little trampoline going, "Daddy, Daddy, look at me, I'm jumping." And she was just bouncing around so happily. And oh my gosh, my heart just melted. And I got on the floor and it was like God was telling me, "You're already rich. You are already rich. Look what you have." And so the second time my listing got shut down, guys, it actually was so much easier for me. I woke up and I was like, not again, and I remember I was like, but I knew I'd get it back. I knew I'd get it back because I got it back before. And I walked out and I saw my little princess sleeping on the couch, and I got tears in my eyes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am so blessed. I don't know if you've heard the song, Stephen, Butterfly Kisses, by Bob Carlyle. Yeah. But man, I'll tell you what, that song makes me tear up every time I think about it. But I'm so blessed. I know that she came from God and she was put in my life and she was a blessing. But that happened to me daily. I was just seeing how blessed I really was, even though I didn't have thousands of dollars racking up every day because my sales weren't coming in. I was just seeing how blessed I was. And so, and maybe that was part of my test, was to learn how to be more humble and to learn how to be more grateful, because life can always be worse. things can always happen that are worse. And I thought, if I lost one of my kids, that would be the worst thing that could happen to me in life. And so things could always be so much worse. So we always have to strive to maintain a state of gratitude. And I think I was able to accomplish that. And doors were opened. And so I just believe that there's a spiritual element to life that tests us. And I don't think that those people that sit on the sidelines and gripe and complain and find fault with every little program get anywhere. One of them messaged me the other day. This is why I thought about these. And he was a member of the challenge group, which is full of a bunch of wonderful people. But there's a lot of people that sometimes don't take the leap into the mastermind. And he was a little discouraged by some negative comments that he had heard in there about scams and stuff. And I said, you know what? I said, I've went in there and I told people, how is this a scam? I've made $800,000 in revenue in the first 11 months. I followed the process and crickets, nobody responds to that. And so, I don't think that if you're in that mindset, you're ever going to go anywhere. And that's why I was so inspired when I was being interviewed on the live challenge. When I was watching the comments coming in, I was seeing people say, I will find a way to do this. Man, I was touched. I was a little emotional at seeing that. That inspires me to see that in people, because that is the God-given human spirit, right, that we have. And I believe that we're all children of God, and I believe that we all have that sort of divine and infinite worth and potential in all of us. We just have to weed out the negative things that society has taught us and that family cultures have taught us, and we just have to say, okay, I'm just going to trust. I'm going to go with it, and yeah,
it's huge. I remember at the conference we were at recently, Brendon Burchard was talking about how in times of kind of like big change, right? Like like pandemic, right? Like big change, big shift, or even like big life challenges, right? The first default kind of response people go into is kind of like security, like protect, like they kind of focus all on themselves. But a lot of times how people connect in those seasons is complaint, right? Because complaint, it's like the easiest thing to do. Like, oh, this is happening to me. But then people connect on that, right? They find other complainers, right? Who are also complaining. And then they bond in that season with like, it's unfortunate, but like we look for the things that we're saying, And so, however, that can keep people really stuck in that phase, like of just kind of like security, protection, like just kind of lockdown mode, right? And Brendon really was encouraging like that there's these two other phases that we can really step into where you're getting out of security, you're starting to think about instead of like, instead of just like thinking about yourself, you're thinking about like, who am I now in this new season, right? And we kind of saw this with the pandemic, right? A lot of people had like, okay, just like protect the family, get the toilet paper. Like it just went like lockdown mode. And then people were like, and then they lose the job, right? And then now they're like 6 months in, they're like, now who am I in this season? And they start to kind of reinvent. We saw a lot of pivots, a lot of identity changes, a lot of job changes in that season. A lot of people in Rainmakers like totally pivoting. And then like the third phase he talked about is really where you're going back to producer mode. You're basically back into like the how can I, the abundance. But sometimes we have these things that come up in our life that kind of push us back into that scarcity mode. And the faster you can get back into that kind of like you said, gratefulness, abundance, thinking, how can I, then you start attracting people that also resonate with that and you're getting more encouraged. And so that was like super cool to see when you were sharing your story, those people were lighting up, the people were like, me too. Like, this is going to be me a year from now. This is going to be my story. I will find a way. And so that's why we have this, like, we try to really push that culture in Rainmakers of just sharing the win, sharing the positive, because it's unfortunate that like sometimes if there is negative things, just in any business, in any walk of life, it seems like those are louder, and if we don't create a culture of positivity in our families and in our businesses, like it's just gonna be depressing all the time. Right. I appreciate you sharing your wins. And like, I saw you post the other day, like the valuation of your business on Helium 10, the software we use, is like over $1 million. That's so cool. And I don't know, what are you dreaming forward about, like in your business? Like, where do you see this thing going in the next couple of years? Like, what's your big vision for the business?
Question. I think that my end goal is to build it up big enough to sell it for a lot of money. So my goal by the end of 2024 is to get my business revenue up to $10 million and then hopefully sell it for at least 3 times that amount. And the reason why is because, I would love to hold on to it and keep building it, but I can start another one. And really what I want to do, and I know that there's a lot of people that can relate me, is I want to have financial security, right? I want to be able to pay off a house with cash by the end of 2024. Actually, by the end of 2023, when the market comes down a little bit more. I went to the Parade of Homes recently and I saw the home that I wanted, and I was like, I could actually qualify for that home right now. It was around $720,000. And based upon our income now, I could qualify for that home. But my goal is to just be able to pay it off with cash, not deal with the high interest rates, and just have a secure amount of money in the bank, be completely debt free on a home, on vehicles, and then start another Amazon business with more capital, and do it again, create some more residual income.
That's so amazing. Cool. And that's a pathway we see a lot of rainmakers trending towards, is like build it 1, 2, 3 years, sell the business, exit the business, multi-million-dollar exit, and then do it again. And that's what we recommend. Is like, I think a lot of times people make a big sale, make a lot of money in some sort of financial exit event, and then they go try to dabble in some other industry that they have never done, and then they lose all their money. Not to say you can't do that, but like if you study people that have made money and lost all their money, that's typically the biggest thing. They kill it over here, they crush it in here, and they go try to like be an expert on something else. And so that's what I fully would recommend for you, for sure. Just do it once, sell it. You get a ton of experience, even in that process of selling the business, and then repeat the process, do it again. I love that, Spencer. I love the vision.
And any financial advisor will tell you, if you ask them, what's the fastest way to create wealth? They're going to say, build a business. As much as I'd want to put money into other things, like possibly real estate or something like that, doing an Amazon business is so much easier. Why not do it again?
That's amazing, Spencer. So
man,
cool.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, sharing your story.
My pleasure.
If you're inspired by this show, definitely share this episode with a friend. If you are listening to this show and you're like, what is this Rainmakers thing? You could check out the challenge. That's like that's what Spencer went through about a year ago. You can go to the Rainmaker Challenge, rainmakerchallenge.com, and check that out. Just leave encouraged, hopeful, and know that if walls are coming up in your life, you can get through this.
Yeah.
Spencer did it. You can do it. We've done it. And if you need encouragement, get in our community, because it's full of encouragement like this all the time. So thank you, Spencer, for being here. Really appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks, everybody. We'll see ya.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. Hey, if you are not a part of our Rainmaker Mastermind, we have a new opportunity for you to book a one-on-one strategy call with one of our Rainmaker coaches.
If you want to get a call with them, see if it's a good fit for you to work with us to build a business that allows you to have time freedom and financial freedom, you can get that call at makeitrainmama.com/podcast. That's makeitrainmama, MOMMA.com/podcast.